To enable you to more fully grasp the profundity of this ideal, we shall give you simple and familiar examples which relate to it. Perhaps the simplest of these is to recall something you must have often wondered about. Let us return to the example of the seed which you hold in your hand, and meditate upon it. You have realized that the ultra-microscopic seed enfolded within its surrounding placenta contains within it the image of every branch, leaf, and fiber of what will be a 50-ton tree 100 feet high. You have recalled to yourself that no two leaves or 2 millimeters of that tree are alike. You have undoubtedly recalled 100 wonders of that tree, and ask yourself how it is possible for all of that great tree to be enfolded within a microscopic point. What you have never realized in this respect is that you are endeavoring to translate the unfamiliar zero universe of mind idea, which has no dimension, into the universe of dimension which you are familiar with. That is a very difficult thing for you to do at this present stage of mind unfolding in the human race. A close approach to it in human technique with light and photography might help you to grasp it. We will try a familiar one. If, for example, you see a 20-foot high picture in the cinema, you know that it is a light projection from a miniature image. You can see the big picture with ease, but if you look for a face upon the miniature, which you can see with great detail upon the screen, you will not be able to more than locate its position upon the film image. Let us carry this one step further. Human ingenuity has devised a technique whereby microfilms can be made. Now, if you look at it, you will not be able to locate the position of a whole man, much less his face. Yet it can be multiplied into distinct visibility from that invisible point, just as the invisible oak can, likewise, be multiplied into distinct visibility. So also can ear-splitting, deafening sound become silent and locked up as silence in a box, awaiting your mind command to again project it into loud sound. Let us take another step. Light is limitless, but human technique and material is not. Let us assume, however, that it is possible to project a picture 100 feet high from that microfilm. If you carry this thought into deep meditation, you will understand how dimension itself folds up to zero in the seed record of yourself, as it almost folds up to zero on the microfilm. If we now return to the 100-foot-high, 50-ton oak, you can more readily comprehend that dimensioned, complex, patterned bodies can unfold in great variety of detailed effect from a mind concept of non-dimension. But likewise, they can refold into non-dimension. By taking another step, we can perhaps help you to comprehend this idea more clearly. In your imagination, look carefully upon the large cinema picture and realize that there is one prime essential to its understanding that is not photographed here. That one essential is the idea of the picture. The idea is not photographed. It is not there at all. You cannot see it, no matter how carefully you look. Yet you know it as well as though you could see it. Idea is never created. Its body is alone created. Idea has no dimension. It is only the projected image of idea which has dimension. Idea is never created. It is but simulated. If you have followed these steps with even partial understanding, you will comprehend the description we have given you of the bridge between man and God, which the inert gases provide, and the further description we will now add to it. To help you with this further understanding, turn back to Figure 41, which diagrams one inert gas unit, many millions of times magnified. The central portion of that diagram represents the mind within motion. It is absolutely still at its center, which is the kingdom of heaven within every creating thing, which Jesus tried to tell men about. That is God's universe. But it is also man's when he becomes aware of it. Until man does thus become aware of it, he is but a mortal body. Unknown to him, however, for the long ages of his unawareness, something within that invisibility, which centers the rings, is eternally reaching out to him, and to all creating things, which he at first feels as instinct. That is man's first bridge to God. Figure 48, and go to Figure 48 and read the words printed within the zero area. Long, long ages pass before that bridge, which reaches out to him from its dark, becomes illumined with its own magnetic light of mind knowing, which then comes to him as inspiration. Even then, man may still not know that God is actually talking to him in God's language of light. That spark is awakened light in him. Now, that spark of awakened light in him may burn in him as genius man for many lives before he finally becomes aware of his oneness with that light. Then there comes to genius man that great blinding flash of magnetic light, which engulfs him and takes him across that bridge from his world of motion unto its very stillness. Then he really does hear God's voice saying, "See me, be thou fulcrum of thine own power." Genius man has then fully crossed the bridge from motion into that stillness of the One, which opens the door to the eternal, omnipotent, and omnipotent light of mind. Then, and not until then, can man say, "I and my Father are one," and know its meaning. That is what Christ consciousness means. It is the final goal of all men. This man cannot yet comprehend, for the human race is still in its spiritual infancy, and the journey of life is long. The 5 stages in the unfolding of man's long journey, from primate man to Christ consciousness, has, perhaps, never been more fully explained than in God will work with you, but not for you. Human pens can but write words. They cannot write their knowing into those words for others who have not that knowing. A symphony can be well heard by moron and animal, as by the genius. But the soul of the composer is not heard by one, and is movingly heard by the other. To some of you, these words, which we have just written, are but words, and will be for thousands of years hence. But not to all of you. There are some who will understand and be greatly moved. To all of you, however, we may begin your comprehension by opening the doors to the invisible unknown just a little bit farther, by more fully explaining the office and purpose of the inert gases. It will help you much in this respect if you will but use your imagination in relation to an effect in nature with which very few are familiar, the effect of ultra-microscopic smallness. Man in the mass thinks in terms of bigness of dimension. His senses are geared to dimension. He sees thousands of objects for miles about him and for millions of miles out into space. His senses are geared to motion also, and the many lights and sounds which are one with motion. His senses are likewise geared to extension. They see only the unfolding extensions, which are projected from the seed. he does not even realize that what he views in big scale out there is enfolded within him, so near to zero scale in motion and pattern that all of it occupies only a microcosmic scale image in one's eye. Is this clear to you? Do you realize that the bigness out there is identical with the smallness within your eye? If so, can you not begin to accustom your thinking to the fact that the entire cone of the visible universe is enfolded within and extended from its apex by the mere spiritual mechanics of creative imagining? As your power of thinking grows to this magnitude, you will then soon be ready to ask of yourself the following question. If objectivity and dimension are but imaginings, what then shall we say about the motion which created them? If you fully comprehend these facts, you can also fully comprehend that the bigness out there is an extended radial enlargement of this zero smallness within you. If you will but add to this thought the fact that the small image is a recording of the other, you are coming closer to a comprehension of that great secret of nature. Now we ask that you add one more thought to this picture. Add to it the fact that the large and small image are not two, they are one. The same light which created one created the other, and the rays of that projected light connect the two as substantially as the light waves connect the sounds of a man's voice to the tape which is recording it. In other words, whatever is seemingly happening anywhere out there in extended space is being simultaneously recorded within the zero universe upon the four rings of the inert gas series, which bridge God's knowing to his thinking. Now add to this thought the fact that every thought and action taking place in the extended universe of motion is simultaneously taking place everywhere in it. If that is so, and your radio and television have long told you it is so, can you ever again think of the universe as any more than one? If you have now arrived at this stage of comprehension in your knowing, you can complete your knowledge of the cosmos by including in it the one source of that extended image you now know, God and man and all things else, as one. That which is transient in motion is eternal in the translucent light of the inert gases, which divides the magnetic light of mind to produce pairs of electric bodies. These inert gases record all effects of creative thinking upon their four rings, as precisely as the rings of a phonograph disc records extended effects. If you fully understand this, you can now comprehend that as the oak unfolds from its zero seed to extend into space, the oak tree patterns of old and new growth simultaneously refold into its seed. Every leaf and branch are as perfect in the invisible oak as they are in the visible one. The marvelous thought about this is the fact that the extended one can perish, but the seed record is imperishable. Nothing can hurt or affect that seed, even though its planet may perish along with its extended mortal image. In other words, God's thoughts are not transient. They are immortal image forms of immortal idea. They repeat themselves in nature eternally, for that is what nature is. Nature is a light extension of the light of mind idea. The next step for you to take in greater preparation for your cosmic knowing is to translate the effect of the oak tree body to the body of man. The projected image of a baby begins by the unfolding of the eternal record of itself, which eternally exist in God's mind universe, all of the thousands of detailed forms of cells and body parts, are but repeated extensions of eternally existent thought conceptions. If you will but realize their oneness in the light which they are, you understand that the body of man is but a projected thought image in motion of an eternal thought image in God's mind. That being so, can you not now fully comprehend that man cannot die? The light which images him may be shut off from its projected source for a time, but it will again be projected from its eternal source until its purpose for seeming existence has been fulfilled. That is what is meant by the verse from 1 Corinthians, which headed that part of our narrative. At this point, it will be helpful if we enlarge upon the idea above stated in regard to temporarily shutting the light of mind from the projected image of mind imagining. We mean by this exactly what you mean by saying, John Smith was killed by a bullet. When the light is shut off in the cinema, the projected picture ceases, but the reality of that picture still exists as idea and can be repeated. The entirety of this objective universe of moving bodies is precisely alike in principle to the cinema. It is a series of electrically projected pulsings of changing thought patterns with black rest gaps between every change of thought pattern. The pulsings are so fast that ever-changing patterns create the illusion of motion and all of its kindred effects. The projected pulsings are transient effects which ever change. The source of those pulsings is eternal and never changes. There is no motion in the cosmic cinema, all of its radial projection from a zero fulcrum of stillness. All of it is a radial projection from a zero fulcrum of stillness. It is the apex of an unborn cone. A radial projection from zero creates the illusion of a three-dimensional universe. Its sequences of pulsing create the illusion of time. Your body is a mind projection of yourself. We are thoughts of mind being made in the image of our imagining. The multiplicity of mathematics as well as the density of concentrated thinking are expressed in infinite variety and complexity out there on the other ends of light rays, but they are zero at their source within them. That brings us back to John Smith, whom you say was killed by a bullet. It is true that a whole system of the growth of thought patterns, which constituted the projected image of John Smith, was interrupted, but it is not true to say that he was killed, for John Smith was not out there where he could be killed. John Smith is a mind identity. He is not one thought of the cosmic thinker, but is also one with the one thinker. Never forget that John Smith and the creator of this universe are one. That one cannot be killed. Let us parallel this thought with other words. Instead of John Smith being killed by a bullet, let us say he was electrocuted. That means that his light was shut off by sending a current through his projecting wires, which was too great for them to carry. If we now substitute a body of tungsten for the body of John Smith and electrocute the tungsten, it also would be short-circuited or killed, if you prefer to use that word. As we described in previous pages, a tungsten wire thus electrocuted in a vacuum tube leaves a residue of the inert gas helium. That helium is the soul seed of the tungsten body. It is the soul record of that body, which is its identity in a unitary universe. It is the zero of tungsten's multiplicity. That cannot be killed, nor can it be prevented from reincarnating its image within it. This is a universe of eternal repetitions of pulsing thoughts, which are ever being repeated. In the cosmic sense, reincarnation and repetition mean the same thing, for nature is eternal. It is endless and beginningless. The idea of death or of identity or of being killed is a conclusion of the senses of bodies. Such a thought is impossible for the knowing mind of the cosmic mystic. It is necessary to know why tungsten becomes helium. There are 9 inert soul-recording gases. Why helium? The inert gas for the tungsten octave is xenon. Why should tungsten not refold into xenon? The answer is that it does refold into xenon, but all of the inert gases are within each other, and helium is the balancing inert gas of the 9. Xenon expands into krypton. Krypton expands into argon, then into neon, until it finds balance in carbon. This opens new worlds for further explanation, for which we have not pages enough here. We can exemplify, however, by having you open the damper pedal of your piano and strike any one note hard. If you do this, you will also hear every other octave note above and below it sounding in their own frequencies. One of these notes will dominate over all the others, however, and that is the mid-tone of all the octaves. That mid-tone is the crest of the universal wave. All effects of nature reach a wave crest. They must, or perish, as the 9th octave perishes through inability to create a wave crest by the uniting of balanced pairs. Carbon is the mid-tone of all the elemental octaves. The radar principle of nature is also another world, for which we do not have pages for, but carbon is the radial cube of the zero universe, and the radar principle in projected effect is cube-dominated. To fully comprehend radar, one must fully comprehend the meaning and purpose of light of mind and pairs of lights of body, and how the latter acts as mirrors and lenses in the light pressures which constitute this light wave universe. After all, a cosmic cinema must have its projecting machine, just as man's projector must have its mirrors and lenses. As a fact of nature, the cube of 9 light planes of zero curvature is the cosmic projector, and the equipotential curved light pressures, which are the product of that projection, are its lenses, which divide and multiply projected effect. Out of this simple cosmic process, the curved universe of motion appears from within its cube planes of zero curvature, and the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 light wave universe of seeming motion appears to deceive the senses of the human race of such an early stage of unfolding intelligence as ours, into believing that the projected mirror image is the real body, which thinks and knows and lives and dies. Early man never gave a thought to the fact that his body is but an actor in the cosmic drama of cause and effect, created by mind desire to simulate the love ideal of balance equilibrium by simulating that ideal in moving image forms by light wave projections. It is regrettable that we cannot help to further clarify this thought by giving the several chapters which would be necessary for explaining the light wave which constitutes this entire universe and radar which repeats its seeming divisions. This was intended to be a small book limited to one purpose. It could very easily become a massive one by exceeding its purpose. We feel, however, that one paragraph can be spared to explain why it is that science is confused about light expressing itself as both wave and corpuscle. The basis of that explanation rests upon the fact that the wave belongs in its entirety to the zero of gravity, while corpuscles of matter belong to electric motion. Every octave wave is a gravity shaft around which corpuscular matter spins. Ideal is one, but must be made two to produce motion by interchange between the two. If you will bear in mind that such divisions merely simulate ideal, and that ideal is never created, you will more fully comprehend why John Smith could not be killed. John Smith, the immortal, was never created. John Smith, the eternal ideal, is divine. John Smith, the moving image, is but a simulation. That brings us back to two statements made heretofore which can be more clarified right here by adding the above stated thought to them. We stated further back that a certain point in the zero universe became your controlling center or the source of your identity. The zero universe is not divisible, however. Mind thinking at any one cathoid point in it is universally repeated in every other point in it. In other words, your identity in the mind universe is God's identity. Your identity is universally enfolded within all other identities. You are one created unit thought body in the universe ideal of man. You are not one, you are all men, billions of them. You exist in them, and they in you. Whatever you think you do individually, you are doing universally. Your thoughts are every man's thoughts, and theirs are yours. Ever happening anywhere by any man on other body in nature, or other body in nature, simultaneously happens everywhere throughout the universe. But each happening in any body informs all other bodies of its new condition of effect as a light speed of 186,400 miles per second. We have also said, that there is no death in nature. These two statements lead to much confusion to those who are not yet permitted to know that which they cannot see. One of the thoughts which thus confuses is the thought which is expressed by many who are grieved at the loss of a loved one. These continually ask why, if there is no death, they cannot communicate with their loved one. This would be quite self-explanatory if one would but think things through by assembling the above stated facts as a foundation to reason from. Let us do this together. And I will begin that explanation in the next series.